Chapter 11. The Second Evolution 3. The Second Evolution 3. My vision was a little strange. Suddenly the floor was far away, and the ceiling was close. The cave was tiny, and it seemed narrow. I then found out my body had gotten bigger. I raised my hand and looked at it. It wasn't a goblin's arm anymore. It was robust and muscular compared to the delicate and slim one I had when I was human. My legs were also longer. They almost look human, except for the dark, greenish-brown wrinkled skin. The difference was a lot. I clenched my fist and felt my power. I smiled and called out the status. Kang Si-ha, Fate. Hob Goblin LV 25. Strength, 91 Stamina, 90 Magic, 31 Luck Dash. Skill Ebon Heart, Predation LV 2. Escape LV 1. Lower Swordsmanship LV 1. Beginner Knife Throw LV 3. Beginner Lightning Magic LV 4. Beginner Sensing LV 6. Beginner Attack LV 3. Beginner Leadership LV 1. Beginner State Resistance LV 3. It wasn't the same as when I became a goblin fighter. My transformation into a hobgoblin was beyond my imagination. Strength and stamina increased by exactly 25, and my then shabby magic, which was only 6, grew to 31 at once. It wasn't much, but the fountain of my heart was flickering 5 times more than before. Now it felt possible to shoot 10 lightning strikes. Strength, stamina, and magic all increased by 25. Could it have been added to my level because I had evolved into a hobgoblin? Anyway, what was important was the fact that I became stronger. Everything had changed. Everything. I couldn't believe that I evolved from a puny goblin to this. I was ecstatic that I had finally gotten out of the bottom of the food chain and that there are monsters that will be scared of me. However, I realized that for as long as I was still in the vast and deep dungeon, I was still a weak monster. Monsters that were stronger than me inevitably existed, as much as the depth and vastness of this dungeon existed too. But even so, I was happy. My ebon heart was telling me that my evolution would not end as a goblin. My heart is beating so hard. I need to go ahead, go down, further down, until there is no longer a place to go to someday. Until there is nothing more to explore. Until I reach the peak of this evolution. Like in the past, as soon as I finished the evolution process, a glass window popped up to alert me of my new quest. Quest generated. You have noticed your specialty. Whether you accept the destiny given to you as a curse or a blessing depends on your efforts. You have to go further. Predation of Hunted Goblin Fighter 0/1000. Predation of Hunted Goblin Warrior 0 of 200. Predation of Hunted Goblin Knight 0 out of 5. Predation of Hunted Goblin King 0/1. What? I rubbed my eyes and rechecked the quest. It was not wrong. 1,000 Goblin Fighters, 200 Goblin Warriors, 5 Goblin Knights, and 1 Goblin King. I had never encountered a Goblin Knight before, and this was the first time I had come across the name Goblin King. Before, I only had to hunt and prey on monsters on the same level as myself. It was irrespective of whether I evolved into a hobgoblin or a goblin warrior. There was no distinction between them. But the Goblin King? I thought it was too difficult then suddenly. I had this idea. Wouldn't it be possible to evolve by just hunting a lot of goblin warriors and leveling up? Because I only needed to be strong enough to survive. It was such a dangerous venture. And I thought to myself that I must be crazy. The escape skill has been lost. At that moment, I stopped thinking. I tried to imagine what the text that just came up in front of my eyes meant. I opened the status. The escape skill wasn't there. I knew my ebon heart was the reason why it was gone. My heart, which I considered to be my perfect ally, had just swallowed up my chances of surviving a crisis. Why? My thumping heart couldn't find answers. But I realized intuitively that this guy was instructing me. I shouldn't escape? As if I was convinced, my heart started racing. Rather than giving you strength and opportunity to escape, I am forcing you to go forward. Ha! A bitter smile appeared. My bitterness soared. It happened so suddenly, but it quickly ate my mind. From the moment I opened my eyes with a goblin's body to this moment, the fact that I wasn't the one in control of my situation angered me. I'm not a suicide candidate. What are you talking about? It's me who decides what to do. Beginner throwing skills have been lost. With the rising rage, I had no time to make severe judgments. I pulled out a sharp iron sword, held it, and yelled at the top of my lungs. At this moment, there was no thought in my head that I had to survive. Don't threaten me. Don't try to make me do what you want. I don't want to be strong. I just don't want to die. Does the ebon heart understand what I mean? The heart pounded exceptionally hard. I was in pain. Beginner lightning skills have been lost. At that moment, my reason reached its limit. I couldn't do anything on my own. It's the same from my birth to the day I died, and even after opening my eyes with the goblin's body. I tried to focus on convincing myself that my life was precious and that I would survive, and that I should ignore everything else. But I couldn't. I wanted to have it my way. My actions, my life. I was able to convince everyone else, but I could not tolerate this damn heart trying to control me and my thoughts. I am me. I struggled to save my life while I was scared in front of a mighty enemy. It was all me. What will happen after I deny it? Was it really me? No. I don't want to be told what to do. I want to be me. I knew I was changing, and I wasn't hesitant to change. But I wanted it to be on my own will. No one else can force it. If that's not how things were going to be, then I was as good as dead, and I'll crush this fucking heart with my hands and die. I realized it was only at this moment that my ego, which was too faint, began to shine. I'm good as dead anyway, so I was more confident than ever before. An utterly delightful conviction. But just before I could pierce my skin and drive a sword into my heart, my arm stopped. At that moment, my heart shook. Then a glass window appeared. Ebon heart, you will be able to detect a crisis. Positive corrections are made to all combat activities. The body evolves infinitely as it grows. Oh. Information related to the ebon heart was rising in the glass window that raised one question mark to add on the already existing question marks. What is this? I muttered unconsciously. It was a little cold. The heart, which had stopped for a moment, resumed its activity gradually. At the same time, a reminder popped up in front of me. You have acquired the beginner's black lightning skill. Beginner Black Lightning LV1. Magic art for dealing with cursed lightning. Right now, you can only extend the bolt through the palm of your hand. Beginner lightning magic did not come back. But it seemed like it was for my own good. At first glance, it seemed more substantial than lightning magic. I put the sword back. I had won. I succeeded in engraving my determination on my heart that was trying to control my life freely without listening to me, its owner. Are you sure you want to abandon the quest? I laughed out loud. The quest is not related to the ebon heart. That was a stupid idea. I shook my head slowly. No way. I was just scared for a moment and thought that I could evolve without finishing the quest and just level up on my own. I didn't want to take such vital risks. But I was wrong. As I thought soberly about things, I realized that I couldn't change what I needed to do in the quest. Evolution was possible only after completing the quest unconditionally. The conditions for evolution were presented in the quest, and the task was to catch a goblin knight and the king someday. However, I still had some uneasiness. Why do people always rush me to do things? Will this ever stop? Why do I need to kill a goblin knight? Will I be able to kill the goblin king? Don't you ever feel scared? Have you ever thought of just running away? So many thoughts flooded my mind. First, my escape skill disappeared. Then, my heart tries to dominate me, even though it was my own heart. It hurt my self-esteem, and so I tried to push away all the grievances, anger, and anxiety I had. I had survived and struggled so arduously, but there I was impulsively trying to kill myself. It was extremely contradictory. Only, I think my actions were right. What I lacked so far was just resolution. When things became too much to handle or didn't go my way, I poked myself in the heart. I continuously exposed myself to the risk of death, unable to take even a little rest. Kill, eat. My mental state was not normal. It must have been affected a lot. Come to think of it, I think this series of events will eventually make me go crazy. I do not want to die. What's more ironic was that I was yelling, and if I continue shouting so loudly in the dungeon, I will attract unwanted attention and possibly die. I needed to stabilize myself and control my mind. The stupid things that happened should never happen again. But before that, I raised my head. Goblin fighters with rusty swords were pouring in from all sides of the corridor. I had to pay the consequences for my actions. Chapter 12. Exclusive Store 1. Exclusive Store 1. I was now adequately armed with the Goblin Warrior's Colossal Sword and the Bronze Shield. Blood Colossal Sword, 81/194. Attack 94. Bronze Shield, 300 out of 300. Defense 80. When I was a goblin fighter, wielding the sword was not a joke. But now that I had evolved into a hobgoblin, it was possible to use the sword in one hand and hold a shield in the other. I rushed in one direction, a bastard sword in my left hand and a bronze shield in my right hand. It was laughable watching goblin fighters at the front who were wielding rusty swords. Kiong. You gained 90 experience. You acquired 10 bronze. The goblin fighter lashed his sword with all the strength he could muster. Watching him, I thought he was much like me when I first met a goblin warrior. With the abilities that I had now acquired, I was confident that even if my opponent were a goblin warrior, I would not suffer defeat. You gained 90 experience. You acquired 10 bronze. You gained 90 experience. You acquired 10 bronze. I wielded and swung my sword, and each time 1 or 2 goblin fighters died. The goblin warrior's rusty black bronze shield couldn't be penetrated. However, it bothered me that the goblin fighters were coming in from all sides. This was my first time fighting against enemies coming from both the front and the back. I used the detection skill to track all enemies around me and struck them before they got too close to me. You gained 90 experience. You acquired 10 bronze. You gained 90 experience. You acquired 10 bronze. You gained 90 experience. You acquired 10 bronze. As the battle ensued, gradually, a mountain of corpses built up around me. I thought the inventory would increase once again because I had evolved, but even so, it was impossible to insert the bodies of a large number of goblin fighters. It was getting harder for me to move because my space slowly became smaller as I continued dropping more goblin fighter bodies on the ground. But even still, the number of goblin fighters that were rushing towards me just kept increasing. You gained 90 experience. You acquired 10 bronze. Crack! Just when it seemed that I was going to be beaten by a group of goblin fighters, an enemy suddenly propelled away when it hit the edge of my sword. At that moment, a group of goblin fighters near the tip of my sword trembled. I realized why. It was black lightning. I was able to pull it out with the tip of the sword. This was an excellent opportunity to slay the opponents. Recognizing that my mana was still over 70%, I stretched out the sword once more and issued a black lightning bolt. This time, the black lightning strike was visible. Shortly after that, the goblin fighters that had gathered together were electrocuted and solidified in place. Not missing the chance, I kicked the floor and ran forward, swinging the sword over the side. 20 or more goblin fighters got electrocuted. The upper and lower parts of their waists burnt all at once, and their bodies fell to the floor. I ran over their bodies and rushed with a shield towards the goblin fighters, who appeared behind them. As the battle lines collapsed and the siege chain became weak, the goblin fighters were unable to resist and fell. I pulled the sword out of the shield and sliced the goblin fighters in range. Level up! All the wounds I suffered during the short battle disappeared. Only my level increased, but I felt that my arm strength had grown as well. I cheered and wielded my sword. The screams of the goblin fighters reverberated in the entire cave. Wait! It was at that moment that an ominous thought crossed my mind. With the goblin fighters' screams, won't more come out? My assumptions were always accurate, and damn. A goblin warrior appeared at the opposite end of the corridor where I was fighting. He was carrying a wooden shield, not a bronze shield, and he had leather armor equipped. The weapon seemed a little lighter than my sword, but the blade looked just as sharp. He wielded his sword and killed nearby goblin fighters. Goblin fighters started flocking together with hostility. Kick, ki. He also realized what the goblin fighters were doing, and with a very annoying cry, he rushed towards them, slicing, throwing, and hitting them. I also cut as many goblin fighters as possible before they got close to me. Of course, since the moment he appeared, he hadn't used black lightning, and half of the goblin fighters now rushed towards him. It became more comfortable for me to deal with them without a black lightning strike. Shoo! Damn it! But it was impossible to kill them all without getting hurt. No matter how strong the bronze shield was, I couldn't cover my whole body with it. My wounds were caused mainly by the guys who attacked me from behind. You gained 85 experience. You acquired 10 bronze. I violently swung my sword across and cut them off at once. Blood sprang from their wounds and flowed down their bodies. The pain must have been excruciating for them, but they couldn't show signs of weakness because of the battle's rising momentum. It was better to level up, and those who would give me more experience were piled up on the ground like a mountain. I pushed exhaustion out of my mind and rushed towards them again. Wow! Then I heard a goblin warrior yell quite close to me. I tried to grasp his approximate location and intent with my detection skill. I quickly rolled to the ground full of corpses and cut off a goblin fighter's hand with my sword. I stood up, put the hand in my mouth and started chewing. I continued eating it while rolling to the floor, evading the goblin warrior's attacks, and I recovered my health a little. When he looked at me and realized that I wasn't a normal upper class, he pushed all the goblin fighters out of the way and revealed himself to me. I also reached out to him. A black thunderbolt popped out and hit him. Crack. However, he gave me a very calm look, as if he was expecting the black lightning strike. Damn, I had never seen such a thing before. I was nervous and I hit him. He also had a knife, but he dropped it. But suddenly, there was panic on his face, and he tried to reach out for his shield with his hand, but he ended up dropping it the next moment. Only then did I fully realize that he was not completely resistant to the black lightning. Black lightning, a thunderbolt with a curse. The curse seemed to work properly. For a moment, I thought of its power, then my body went into autopilot and automatically launched my huge sword, stabbing the neck of the goblin warrior. The sword couldn't penetrate properly because of his angled position, but the impact was felt because there was so much of blood gushing from his neck. It wasn't until then that the curse worked, but he still rushed towards me, picking up his sword. I wasn't sure what he would do, so I decided to use black lightning twice more. I again stabbed the goblin warrior's neck. He was already cursed and weak. Then he dropped to the ground and died. You gained 600 experience. You acquired 90 bronze. I put the goblin warrior's body straight into the inventory. Then I looked around. Are you going to keep trying? The goblin fighters, who were now afraid of my strength, stepped back little by little. However, something changed in them because their eyes suddenly changed, and they started rushing towards me with their rusty swords. It was not a normal reaction. Something was probably controlling them. I need to break it. However, there was no time to think about such things. I knew I needed to survive first, so I sighed and ran to engage with them. For the time being, there will be no rest. I wished I knew what time it was so that I could measure how long I was wielding the sword. But I had to focus only on the battle, and because of this principle, I wordlessly swung the sword and lifted the shield to stop the enemy's attack without keeping tabs on time, or counting the number of fallen enemies, or checking the status. Only, I realized that the wounds that were inflicted on me were a result of my lack of competency with the shield. It did not fit me. It had nothing to do with my skills. I was moving my body without hesitation. I needed to finish the enemy as quickly as possible. I needed to avoid the enemy attacking me with the shield. Moreover, unless my level rises quickly, I will need to eat the enemy's body during the battle to revitalize my tired body. But both of my hands are occupied by the sword and shield, so I knew it wouldn't go smoothly. I put the shield into the inventory. The wounds on my body increased gradually. I knew I needed to consume a dead goblin fighter's body. Physical fitness and injury were two completely different issues, but as long as I don't suffer significant damage, I could withstand the battle. I knew that eventually, I'd level up, and all the wounds would heal, a fact that, if known, would probably annoy the enemy. Still, this was true when it comes to engaging against the goblin fighters. Attacks by guys like the goblin warrior were fatal, so I must always have a shield when fighting them. However, I was aware of this natural fact only after fighting bitterly against the third goblin warrior and consuming the last remaining potion. At that point, the number of goblin fighters who were continually coming in began to decrease. Chapter 13. Exclusive Store 2. Exclusive Store 2. Ag! The one-armed goblin fighter in front of me shrieked, waving his rusty sword. His right arm stump bleeds where it has been cut off. I took a step back and looked around, not rushing to cut him down. The path we're in was smothered with blood. A mountain of goblin corpses, most of which were entirely beaten and cut out of shape, continued to pile as I kept felling the enemy until no more goblin fighters are to be seen. The shrieking goblin fighter in front of me doesn't look the same anymore. He looks like he knew it was over. Still, he shrieked once more before charging towards me, trying to drive a sword through my heart. The fact that my body wasn't exhausted conversely made me more tired. I knew I had to finish. Swoosh! Shurring! I gave a mighty swing and connected. The charging goblin's head flew. Its bloody afterimage remained floating in the air for a few moments. I grabbed his head and chewed hungrily. You gained 70 experience. You received 10 bronze. The goblin fighter, who gave 100 experience when encountering him for the first time, now only gave 70. What's more, as my level went up, the amount of experience I needed to level up went higher, so I had to kill more and more of these goblin fighters to level up. I looked around once more to the weirdly spectacular mess. It was a place where a normal human being would have thrown up. With a bitter laugh, I sat on the corpse of a female goblin warrior. It hadn't been long since she died. Now I will eat well. As I sat there, looking at the corpses, I wondered if it will take longer to eat them all than fighting against them in battle. So distraught, I pulled the body of the nearest goblin fighter and opened my mouth. Predation of Hunted Goblin Fighter 524/1 000. Predation of Hunted Goblin Warrior 12 of 200. I searched both inside and outside the aisle and inside the inventory, and I confirmed that I had eaten all the corpses except one of the goblin warriors. I had kept it for emergency use. For reference, the inventory was 4x4 or 16 cells in line with the second evolution. It was a tough fight. Once the boat was filled, it was easy to fire mana by shooting 3 or 4 shots. Wielding the sword and draining the boat along with stamina was not a joke. I ate so hard until I had 100, and my stomach was so full I couldn't eat anymore. However, I noticed that the status had a skill called Leap. Beginner Leap LV1. The higher the level, the higher you can jump. Can be used for running away. The description of the skill was simple and the effect was simple. Up, forward, left and right, back, it was just a skill to run. The only drawback of the skill was that it consumes a lot of stamina on a subject that only runs about 1m on a level 1 basis. And it was a blessing to me, at least for now. From the moment I confirmed that the leap was on the status, I ran hard. Every time I ran, my bloated stomach was getting reduced. Stamina was also being consumed rapidly, and just after 5 runs, I was hungry again. From then on, I had to eat until my stamina and magic were exhausted, use the leap and black thunder to lower the numbers, and then repeat my eating routine until my stamina and magic were exhausted. During this time, I wasn't in one's right mind. This wasn't the kind of work that I would do with ordinary thinking. Also, it was less stressful to keep eating than to fight. Despite repeatedly eating for hours after the massacre in the dungeon, I wasn't sure if it exhausted all the goblins. But there was no new goblin fighter appearing in one aisle or the other. I ate more than 500 goblin fighters and 12 goblin warriors without a problem. Goblin fighter was good, but the goblin warrior was better. I would rather eat Jajingmayan than this one. When I finished eating, I paused and confirmed the status that I had put off. Kang Si-ha, Fate. Hob Goblin LV29. Strength, 107 health. 106 magic, 36 luck dash. Skill Ebon Heart, Predation LV2, Lower Swordsmanship LV2, Beginner Black Lever LV3, Beginner Leap LV5, Beginner Sensing LV9, Beginner Attack LV3, Beginner Leadership LV4, Beginner State Resistance LV5. I sighed after seeing the results. After killing 524 goblin fighters and 13 goblin warriors, I only climbed to level 4. I didn't know how long it'll take me to level up by catching the remaining 476 goblin fighters. Still, the growth of the status and skill itself was a pleasure. When it was a goblin, the strength and stamina only increased by 1, but after becoming a hobgoblin, the strength increased by 3, stamina 3, and magic 1 each time the level rose. The predation added 4 to the strength and stamina and 1 to magic. After eating over 500 fighters, my strength and stamina only rose by 4, which meant that, in my experience with leveling up, my strength and stamina increased, so my intake needed to increase. No matter how much I complained, the bottom line was that I needed to eat more. I wanted to moderate my desire to grow my skills further. The swordsmanship had been upgraded and had risen to the 2nd level, and it was incredibly high that I had gained leaps and black lightning due to excessive use for stamina and magic. This was a surprise skill, so I didn't want to raise it because I didn't need to use it. The level of immunity was also up 5 levels. The only strange thing is the leadership skill. Beginner leader has become LV4. You will be able to lead a group. As the level rises, the number of groups that can be gathered increases, and if you have a strong load, or if you successfully command a large number of groups, the skill level increases. More so, there was no one else in the cave except me. I was not leading anyone, so of course I wasn't even going to try using this skill. But even if I tried to write it, I couldn't. Nevertheless, this skill level rises slowly, so it was on the 4th level. Beginner leader has become LV5. Level 1 went up again, and I didn't have to do anything. I tried to reason why this was happening, but no matter how much I tried, the answer never came. I couldn't figure out. It didn't make sense that skills leveled up at will without being used. I decided to push the fact that I owned leadership skills at the back of my mind. I'd find out more about it later when I went upstairs. Hunting and predation were also over. There are no monsters around. Then the time had finally come. 67 silver, 70 bronze. I decided to try a dedicated store. Would you like to enter a dedicated store? Admission is 10 silver. You cannot enter during battle. Yes. No. As soon as I recalled the keyword, exclusive store, a notification window popped up in front of me. I was thrilled to see the words in it. The entrance fee is 10 silver? This spooked me a lot inside, but I reached out to the notification window that says, yes. As soon as my hand touched the notification window, a plain black wooden door with a light bell ringing sprung out of the cave wall I was facing. Enter the exclusive store. Good luck today. This new reminder in front of my eyes made me more anxious. However, the entrance fee of 10 silver was already consumed. I had already paid the value of 100 goblin fighters, and I had no choice but to open the door. However, the place in which the door opened to might have been a mistake. A wall stack with liquor bottles came into view. There was also a quality wooden counter and a chair in front of it. It was the same bar I came to when I didn't have any money to buy pork cutlet. The door closed behind me, and almost immediately, someone appeared at the counter. The voice startled me, for I imagined that nobody else was going to be there. Welcome, he said. He looked different from humans. He had elongated and sharp ears, his skin was white and pale, and he was taller and had a vigorous body. His sleek, silver hair grew over his shoulders. He spoke with a low, subdued voice in clear Korean language. He had clear and transparent eyes, with charming aesthetics. Welcome to the exclusive store, Fate. Oh, hello, he said, making eye contact with me, a hobgoblin, and his warm smile created tiny wrinkles around his eyes. You are the first guest to come to this pub. In my mind, I thought the gentleman was an excellent moral person for having given me essential information within a few minutes of my encounter with him. I was the first guest he had seen since he started running the bar. In other words, no other earthling had ever earned 10 silver so far. Or even if they had collected 10 silver, they were not qualified to enter there. This was exciting news. Haha. It's delightful when you think about it. Isn't it? He laughed nicely and invited me to sit down. I sat in the chair, and suddenly, I was engulfed in incredible sadness. It wasn't until that particular moment that I came in touch with my human side again after all the fighting other monsters in a dark cave. The poison in my heart was released for a little. I felt relaxed for the first time since I awakened in a goblin's body. Only, for every time you enter the exclusive shop, you'll get one drink for free. Would you like to have it now? Alcohol? I was stunned. My ebon heart was beating in my chest. Sorry, I can't afford it, I replied. He looked with a widened gaze as if he couldn't believe my answer. But I didn't intend to drink, whether it was free or paid for. I had no intention of staying where I wasn't sure whether it was a bar or a shop for the rest of my life. I knew the time from the moment I entered the store. A glass window with the numbers 2000 hours on one side of my view proved it. I don't want to be stretched out more than necessary. I don't want to get my mind interfered with by alcohol. I didn't want to be shaken by the uncle's calm and relaxed voice. The place I should be at is that dark dungeon. I have to fight the monsters again. But what the uncle said next surprised me. Chapter 14. Exclusive Store 3. Exclusive Store 3. It's more than what you expected. Yeah. Death, pleasure, and loss. In the end, I must say that I admire Fate's mental power and will. It's really great, beautiful. It is absolutely impossible for me. I was a little embarrassed by the unexpected praise. This uncle knew my situation, so it was not surprising to him. I told him with all my heart that I would not be affected by his praise. What's your name? I asked the man. It is Rain B. You can call me Rain, he answered, a smile still plastered on his face. It's almost as if the bartender stressed the letter B for some reason, but I decided not to ask. After what he said, he placed the glass in front of me. But I have to make a few things clear. I call fate today's luck. I think it will be one of the most significant benefits that fate can get from a dedicated store. I wondered where I had seen the phrase today's luck. Then I remembered that I had seen it in the notification window. I lingered and looked at the glass and asked, "Isn't this just a drink?" "That is correct. At least that's not what fate thinks," he answered. I didn't know where he got the drink from, but I poured it into my glass. The hot reddish liquor filled the glass a little. Now take it hot. Ooh, there was one thing I was convinced of. Rain didn't mean any harm to me. I drank with confidence, though I did not know where the drink came from. Okay. The alcohol was fiery and cold at the same time. I felt my lungs burning the moment the violent scent filled my mouth and nostrils. It was an intense experience indeed. But there was something that surprised me more than that. Acquisition experience 1.5 times is applied for 3 hours from the moment you leave the exclusive store. At that instant, I found out why this drink was called Today's Luck. The effect is random? Rain nodded very lightly and asked me in a hushed tone. Sure. Did you win? It's 1.5 times the experience for 3 hours. Is this a prize? I asked. Hoo-hoo. That's a secret. He laughed lightly. Before I could wrap my head around the new situation, he took the glass from me. Fate, this is a shop. I'm only here to sell things that exist in the store to Fate. I know Fate and Fate knows me, so now I want to show you the products that you can buy with your current money. What do you think? Okay, show me. I like your answer. Let me show you. As soon as he finished saying those words, a glass window came to before my eyes. It was like looking at a catalog of home shopping. Number, photo, and description. It was in repetition. However, there were only 4 products I could buy. First, the hardened steel sword, 150/150. Rare degree normal, attack power 70 at 50 silver. Second, was the reinforced bronze shield, 300/300. Rare degree normal, defense 95 at 50 silver. Third, leather armor, 180/180. Rareness normal, defense 60 at 40 silver. The fourth was the emotion scroll, 1/1. It is a rare item, and the emotion of the object is possible at 55 silver. Reinforced steel swords and reinforced bronze shields cost 50 silver each. Set aside the emotion scroll. Why was it that the leather armor had no other prefix? Moreover, it was cheaper than the sword and shield. Perhaps it was because its quality was lower than swords and shields. Rain, I have issues with the third, I informed him. Yeah. Reinforced leather armor is currently not available for purchase with your money, so I showed you the leather armor instead, Rain answered. Damn it, reinforced armor was what I wanted the most right now. Should I buy and wear 60 leather armor? If not, should I collect more money and come back to the store later to buy reinforced leather armor? I was worried. But then, Rain smiled at me and said, Fate. I admired Fate's mental strength and will. You already told me, I muttered. I can see that you have decided on just 2 products and not the other 2. So just for today, just between you and me, the discount rate will be provided. Immediately after he finished speaking, a new window appeared in front of my eyes. As I looked at it, I thought, even though Rain was not necessarily an awful person, he sure was vicious. 1. Rare item. Blood Iron Armor, 480/480. Defense 230. If you absorb more than a certain amount of blood, the item grows by itself, and the durability is restored by soaking it in blood. Special sale price 55 silver. 2. Rareness cannot be measured. The body under human emphasis, 90/90ths. Includes redemption bonus for Seoul, Jongyogu, Korea when purchasing special sale price 57 silver 70 bronze. I wanted to say something. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Do you like the special sale product? Rain asked. Even though I knew that the words I was trying to say weren't forming in my mouth, I was determined that I wouldn't leave without saying something. Is this what happens? I quickly recovered the body from which I lost my soul with Fate. If Fate's soul escapes from one body and settles again in a human body, the heart will start to run again, Rain said. What? Is that possible? I exclaimed. Of course it's possible. I never lie, Rain answered confidently. Even the reliable words of Rain seemed to mock me. As I listened to him, conceited thoughts filled my mind. My heart was having a seizure again, but this time it was so much that I didn't need a knife. Looking at me, Rain's smile deepened. I could barely calm down. So, I opened my mouth, and without holding back, and let out the screams and growls. It is possible, don't you think? Of course. However, you will need to prepare a suitable excuse for those around you. You could say you were sucked into a small warp gate that happened all over the world during the Great Convergence, or you summoned it while in the dungeon. Then you have nothing to worry about. If I could return to humans, I would return to my former position again, I said. As he handed me the second item, he stopped momentarily and looked at me. Back to my location. Back to my position when I was one of the ugly ones. A despicable guy who just lived every day without any dreams, wills, or possibilities. Rain said, Rain, can I ask you a few questions? My voice was surprisingly calm. Rain gently smiles and replied, I am also not well informed, but I'll give you a free answer today, only for what I think is okay to answer. I asked him in a rush, what happened to the Earth? The Great Convergence caused the Earth to become one with Hatter. Except for a number of complicated explanations, now on Earth abilities, monsters, dungeons, and labyrinths are being played. Everything has changed, he answered. It was just as expected. Just before I died, the announcer was talking about what was happening. A monster had appeared. If it actually did, then yes, it would have been the same world as Rain knew. I subsequently asked, when I go back to being human, will I still have an ebon heart and predation? No. Fate would have seen it with his own eyes. The skill column will be empty, was his firm answer. The answer was also as expected. This skill was only obtained because I was a goblin, and I had the goblin's body. A human being could not handle the ability. I had no such strong talent. That is not what I was born with. Then that was it. The talent that saved me as a goblin and made me alive so far was the ebon heart. I closed my eyes and opened them. I took a breath as I prepared to ask the third question, and I met Rain's calm stare. Rain exhaled and then asked me, Are you not going to ask? I don't want to, I responded quickly. What if I asked and he doesn't answer? Rain smiled again and asked me, Would you like to buy it? Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. But before that, I have another question. I paused briefly, as I watched the middle-aged man wipes a glass with a dry cloth. However, I started but couldn't finish the question. If I continue evolving into a hobgoblin, will I become human again? No, I meant to ask, will I be able to work in human society? Of course. He smiled with sincerity. I wasn't sure whether he liked the way I changed the question midway or not. Good. I have heard everything I need to, I replied, shedding the hesitation in my mind. I will buy a blood iron armor. Back to humans? What will I do if a weak human body falls into a world full of other abilities or monsters? Only then will I be able to eat Jajangmyeon. However, the Jajangmyeon eaten by the ugly man, who has no room for growth, will definitely not taste better than the goblins I had hunted and eaten. When I received the quest, I recalled the text that appeared in the notification window. Curse and blessing. That was right. My situation was really cursed, but at the same time it was a blessing. I was born as an ugly man, lived as an ugly man, and died as an ugly man. I got the chance to seize the position of a real man, not just to envy other good men. I tried to imagine where I had been before. It was possible at this age. From goblin to goblin fighter to hobgoblin, it was a possible choice as I grew. I will win. I was tired of only envying the strong and the mighty. It was terrible to think about going back to humans. I wanted to be stronger. I wanted to survive, but I wanted to be strong enough to be similar to them. I want to be strong in order to survive, and I also want to survive to become strong. I had previously thought the two desires were forming an up-and-down relationship within me, but I was wrong. I wanted to be strong from the beginning. Humans go inside because they are afraid of coming out. That's right, but it wasn't the only reason. I found a rational reason to conceal my own irrational needs. And when I admitted it, I felt comfortable. At this moment, strong and live within me have equal weight. As if he knew it well, Rain said with a satisfied smile, "It really is an excellent choice. It is not uncommon for recovery and growth to occur only by soaking in blood. The process of physically giving him money was not necessary. The 55 silver in the inventory disappeared automatically, and almost instantly, a full body armor made of reddish red steel came into the inventory. I replied, looking at it and my blood bastard sword next to it. But above all, there is a reason why I picked this out. Why? Rain smiled steadily and accepted my question. But I knew that the blood bastard sword I got from the goblin warrior was also a weapon that can be grown just by soaking it in the blood. He wasn't really an ordinary goblin warrior because not only did he have magic, but he eventually defeated a mercenary who had intense energy. It seemed like a miracle that I was able to kill him. Fate, I have a last gift to offer. What is it? It's time, he replied without thinking. Time? I asked, confused. Yeah, we will increase the time limit by 11 minutes to 12 hours and 11 minutes. I know I haven't been able to sleep for a while. What do you think? I refused with a bitter smile and said, that's okay. It is not normal now. It's never normal for a natural sleeping bath to be treated more than it is. As long as you accept this sleep bath as a condition, your resistance to condition abnormality will continue to rise. Only, Rain was speechless. Perhaps his appearance is rare, I thought. I don't want to give myself room. Later, very later, I will pay a fair price. Maybe by that time, you won't have to buy time. This is absolutely surprising for me. Fate is amazing. Then, can I just ask one more question? I see. Ask. Fate would have already died. But why are you calling me Fate and not Kang Si-ha? I intended to ask this question, but came out of my mouth was, do you sell Jajangmyeon? Rain smiled and replied, it's worth 5 gold, guessed. Chapter 15. Mass Appearance 1. Mass Appearance 1. 1.5 times the experience gained for 3 hours from now. 3 hours. When I left the exclusive store, I again met the cave wall that I had faced a little more than 10 minutes ago. My mind was calm again in a different sense than when I was in the store. I felt like I was back in the space where I should be. Instinctively preparing for battle, I triggered my senses and checked my surroundings. A bitter smile appeared as I thought about how I had never punched anyone in my life. I didn't know when I became aggressive. Did I have these capabilities all along? Were they hidden underneath me? I knocked on the red armor with a defensive strength of 230. The armor that perfectly protects the whole body fits me as if it were made for me. What's more, it wasn't very thick, and the structure was great. It barely interfered with my movements. But because of the weight, my running speed slowed down for a little bit. Also, since the strength of the armor was much higher than that of my bronze shield, the damage received on the body was lesser than when the shield blocks an attack. I realized that the shield became useless, and maybe I should just get rid of it. I wish I had one helmet. Will it still be in the dedicated store when I came back later for it? The chance to eat 5 gold jajangmyeon will not come for the time being. It didn't matter though. It grows as long as it doesn't die. One day there will be a day when you can spend 5 gold effortlessly. The duration of 1.5x is 2 hours, 59 minutes, and a few seconds. To maximize efficiency, it is natural to catch a guy who gives you lots of experience. In honor of changing my armor, I decided to immediately challenge the realm of the Goblin Warrior. I already knew the location. I walked quickly and went inside the dungeon. The goblin fighters I encountered were quickly hacked, chopped, and devoured. Fighters with small body sizes were not difficult to eat quickly on the spot. Ugh ag! I heard the Goblin Warrior's 10 furious breaths, and when he stepped into the passage beyond that number, his breathing relaxed. Arrogant but relaxed. Indeed, they were foolish. I stepped into a new aisle, slowly and silently. It was more extensive than the passage so far, and the ceiling was high, and the Goblin Warrior sitting in the middle was eating something. Anyway, it is a great opportunity. I found him and he was full, and while the Goblin Warrior is eating, the opportunity to attack was greater. I may not have thought of attacking the Goblin Warrior before. Now, however, with my increased strength, I was able to move faster and more skillfully, and even though I was a beginner, the level of the surprise skill became 3. In fact, thanks to the Goblin's Warrior focus on what he was eating, he didn't notice me approaching. I approached him carefully. I held the blood bastard sword tight in my left hand, and ready to shoot black thunder at any time with my right. 5 steps. 4 steps. 3 steps. 2 steps. Stabbed. Shunk. The surprise attack succeeded. Bastard, who covered the air with a red line, ripped off his nape. Dark blood sword in the air. The Goblin Warrior screamed in pain. I didn't waste time and shot a black lightning bolt on his face. Dugsh! Go away! However, the moment he was hit by a black thunder, he kicked the corpse of a Balchik towards me and rolled the floor. The black lightning was at beginner level, and so it was not cursed. Shazam! Bugsh! While I was kicking the body that had been thrown at me out of the way, the Goblin Warrior charged and gave a furious kick aimed at my elbow. Kick! Aya! If it was in the past, I would be having a big wound on my forearm, but I had red armor that covered my forearm. Hence the bastard wasn't able to lay a scratch on me. He even missed. He looked crazily at my armor and realized that it was superior to his leather armor. I screamed at his miserable face as my sharp blade ripped off his eyes and finished him off. You gained 1020 experience. You acquired 90 bronze. 2 hours, 49 minutes, and 39 seconds. I laughed as I watched the Goblin Warrior fall on the floor. In a moment, I gained over 1,000 experience points. There was still time, but it couldn't be wasted. It was a little crowded, and I wanted to catch as many Goblin Warriors as possible in the short time available. You acquired a worn leather armor. You acquired a bastard sword with missing teeth. Then what do you do with this body? The Goblin Warrior's body, after a certain period of time, was automatically peeled off from him and into my inventory, as well as the weapons and armor that came into being. Initially, it was my existing style to eat the corpse here, destroy weapons and armor that I do not need to use, and move it. This was because there was not so much space in the inventory. I first broke his weapon and armor so no one could use it anymore. I threw it to the bottom of the dungeon. After thinking for a moment, I decided to save the Goblin Warrior corpse and let the rest go until the inventory allowed me to store some bodies. Of course, when the stamina fell, I would eat even if the time had not passed, and after 3 hours, I'm going to eat the corpse that was left on the road the way I came. The next passage also had a Goblin Warrior. He He was sleeping. I sauntered up to 3 steps away from him and then quickly jumped on him using leap. The leap skill, which became the beginner's 5th level, made it possible to jump swiftly and as high as approximately 1 meter and 50 centimeters. Kirik? Black lightning. This time it went well. When a black lighting magic comes out and hits him, his body trembles and collapses. I played around, first drawing on his neck and riding over his body, kicking away the neatly placed sword and shield near him. Thinking that I was not prepared, the weakened goblin warrior attempted to out and strike me with anger. I saw it coming and brought my sword down to cut his arm off. His flimsy leather armor was torn, and the blood spurted from his arm. Ka-ah! Shunk! It was easier than the first one. I sliced his neck open, and after a few weak struggles, he stayed in place. You received 930 experience. You acquired 85 bronze. 2 hours, 45 minutes, and 11 seconds. Less than before, but still nearly 1,000. I placed his corpse in the inventory. Hunted one in 2 minutes. If I keep doing it this way, I will be able to level up in a short while. Finally came to me. The chance of storm growth. Dugsh. You received 1,110 experience. You acquired 1 silver. 1 hour, 39 minutes, and 28 seconds. Still, I saw a goblin warrior who fell in front of me and grinded it. It brought the number to precisely 32 goblin warriors, and my level was still 29. Even at level 29, I would have accumulated over 50,000 experience. This was too strange. When I reached level 29, I wouldn't need so much experience. There was a difference from the experience required to become level 28, but it did not make a big difference as it is now. No, wait a minute. I remembered when I achieved level 10. At that time, I just went over, but compared to the previous that I climbed to level 7 with less than 200 experience, I remembered that the growth stayed at level 10 even though I received 1,000 experience as quest rewards. The same goes for level 20. I received a relatively large amount of experience, and I thought that many levels would have risen, but it was only at level 25. I thought it was a high enough level at the time, but I didn't need that much experience to achieve level 26 after that. Even then, I thought it was weird. Is it repeating every 10th level? Then there was a similar case in the game. A system that makes leveling in a particular section difficult. The amount of experience required for leveling up has significantly increased, but once the level is exceeded, the growth rate returns to normal. I experienced such a case. If so, I needed convincing to understand. Best of all, my first evolution took place at level 10. The number that drops to May 10th have something to say. I guessed the situation, but I couldn't help getting angry. I was relieved by biting the body of my goblin warrior, who was also weak. Strength has risen by 1. Lower swordsmanship has become LV3. Beginner detection becomes LV10 and changes to lower detection. The detectable range and precision increase. Only, of course, I was happy that my strength increased, but the rise of the 2 skills made me happier. Goblin warriors basically have a high level of beginner fencing. Yes, it is a beginner status. It is not lower. On the other hand, I entered lower fencing, and the gap between the beginner and the lower level made a huge difference in the battle. The orbit of a beginner's sword is visible to me, while as a lower swordsman, I could not read the orbit of the sword I stretched out. The skill was so absolute. So, there was no way that I wouldn't be happy when the level went up. Something else pleased me greatly aside from the lower swordsman skill. So far, with my beginner detection skill, I have been able to detect my surrounding with a range of 14m centered on me, but the level has increased to the lower level, and the range has increased to 20m in a short time. Moreover, the detection feels more refined. The amount of information flowing into my 5 senses within a radius of 20 meters has increased significantly. A normal person equipped with lower detection would have been sick by now, but since my physical ability has increased in many ways, and since I started from the lower level and worked myself up, it was not difficult to adapt. And after adaptation, I felt like I was in the new world. The first information I detected was, there were 2 goblin warriors in the next passage. Chapter 16. Mass Appearance. 2. Mass Appearance. 2. I felt an ominous feeling as I watched them approach. I stood next to the entrance of the aisle. The moment they reached the aisle, they raised their swords with intensity. H.A.P. Great! I stuck my sword, and it put a hole on the neck of the first goblin warrior. I bumped into his body, using it as a shield, while a second goblin warrior attacked. Since my body was covered by the first goblin warrior's body, the second goblin warrior's sword hit its companion's head instead. I whipped my sword to finish the first goblin warrior off. You received 960 experience. You acquired 80 bronze. Beginner surprise has become LV4. I pushed the corpse to the second goblin warrior's body, but he was able to avoid it. I reached out and fired black lightning at him. The black lightning hit his weapon and flowed to shock his body. The moment he closed his eyes, I rushed. He swung his sword and hit my shoulder. Okay. Kirarik. Damn. Thanks to reading the sword's trajectory, I was able to avoid getting hit on the head. However, I am in terrible pain due to my injured shoulder. He tried to injure me by wielding the sword again, but as he did, I leaned back and attacked his chin. Even in pain, my movement did not seem to be affected at all. Crew, stop! Bastard, who pierced his face with his chin, popped out of his head. His sword almost reached my neck before it dropped lifelessly. I was finally able to relax. You received 1080 experience. You acquired 1 silver. Level up. You have acquired the beginner armor defense skill. Beginner armor defense LV1. Use armor to defend against enemy attacks. As the skill level increases, the damage taken from enemies decreases and can be effectively defended. If you hit a lot, your skill will grow. I got the level up that I had been waiting for, and even a skill I never expected. But rather than that, I was reflecting on myself who had just been faked by a goblin warrior. Damn, black lightning is definitely a powerful skill, but it's still beginner level. There is no guarantee that the goblin warrior will be shocked or cursed. It is suicide to believe in only the black lightning. I need to focus instead on sharpening your sword and movements, getting less attack from enemies, and relying on my own defenses, such as the armor defense I just got. Relying totally on black lightning can lead to a fatal mistake, just like the one moments ago. Okay, I'm done thinking about it. Now, it's time to figure out how to deal with the 5 goblin warriors that are approaching in a straight line from the path beyond. Damn it. Of course, I expected to some extent that I would battle with more of them. But I didn't know it would be so fast. There will be some sort of rule. I wish I could figure it out later, but I don't have a chance now. 5. It was difficult if it was before I got the armor. But now it is different. My attack power is strong, and my defense is now strong enough to continue moving even after getting hit. It was not arrogance but confidence. Of course, I should still be careful. I concentrated on the 5 foes running through the aisle, and in a very short moment, I figured out how I would move to get the least amount of damage. One of them rushed forward alone, but fortunately, it was just what I expected. I put my colossal sword straight into the embarrassed warrior's neck. I couldn't take the time to hold on to one guy. My attacks had to be as efficient as possible. Ka-ah! You received 1014 experience. You acquired 83 bronze. I pulled out the sword and rolled back. There was a warrior who used an axe. The thick blade was quite slow, but if it wielded properly, it would have a stronger impact compared to a sword. In an instant, I found myself automatically shooting a black lightning bolt at them. Black lightning is a technique that attacks all enemies in close range. Because they were surrounding me, the 4 were hit by black lightning all at once. 2 of them got paralyzed after being shocked by the bolt. They fell down with a thud. Sadly, it wasn't as effective to the 2 others, but at least I had 2 enemies down temporarily in one shot. Ki-I-E. I faced the goblin warrior with the axe and a goblin warrior with a sword. I hit the axe first. It sent the axe flying through the air. The one with the sword seems to be waiting for me to avoid the falling axe before making his move. I quickly jumped to the side and struck down the wooden axe handle, before clicking the blade away. They will not be able to use it anymore. Hey! The axe warrior went insane with the sight of his broken weapon. He rushed at me, exactly what I was waiting for. I stretched my colossal sword without difficulty and went through his neck. You received 1,200 experience. You acquired 1 silver 10 bronze. At that moment the paralyzed warriors stood up. The effect of the spell has ended. I stepped back again. Ki-e. Because they suffered the black lightning strike from being too close together, they were separate from each other this time, approaching with caution. It's better for me. I was confident that I could deal without difficulty on a one-to-one basis. I assaulted one with my sword raised. At that time, the goblin warrior in front of me raised his sword for a heavy swing. His sword was shining. The ebon heart vibrated once. I could read the sword's trajectory, and I am ready to block it, but I believed in the ebon heart and my instinct. Instead of continuing my assault, I used leap to get back. My body flew as if being dragged by something. The goblin warrior's swinging sword missed, and its blade hit the ground instead. The ground that got hit burned and burst with light. Kerr! The warrior clicked his tongue as if it was a waste. I landed safely from using leap and stared at the burning ground. I was amazed. Obviously, that was an attack using mana. In other words, skill. Meanwhile, the other 2 warriors jumped forward. They were also lifting the sword, but I could not feel any magic power coming from their attacks. I laughed at them and swung my sword to send their weapons flying. Ki-e. A goblin warrior with a stupid face stared at his sword, flying in the air. Beyond the 2, the goblin warrior with the skill began to approach me again. His sword was shining again. I focused on him over the other goblin warriors. I jumped to the right to avoid his sword, and as soon as it missed, I hit him with a counterattack. Blood spurted from his neck. Ki-e. He fell and rolled on the floor. The other warriors were regaining their weapons by that time, but I ignored them. I rushed at the wounded warrior and put him out of his misery. You received 1,290 experience. You acquired 1 silver 15 bronze. I quickly snapped his body and rolled it into my inventory. One of the warriors attacked me, and I felt his sword struck my back. It was painful, but it was a damage that I can take. Kayap! He shrieked as I cut off his arm. He fell on the floor due to the impact. I stepped over his body, sticking my sword in his neck. Gi! Stop! I cast black lightning and made it flow from my hands through the weapon stuck in his neck. K-e-e-e-e. You received 960 experience. You acquired 85 bronze. You acquired the beginner knife throw skill. Damn. The skill that was once lost is now back. But there was no time to waste. I urgently pulled my sword from the corpse and chased after the last goblin warrior. I dealt with him with 1 swing without much difficulty. You received 960 experience. You acquired 85 bronze. If it's just like before, it's time to relax now. As if listening to my murmur, a goblin warrior suddenly roared from the passage over there. Moreover, when I focused on the detection, it seemed that it wouldn't end with just these 5. Maybe I'm going through a massive goblin warrior's appearance. I split open one of the goblin warrior's body. Blood spilled all over, and I carried him more easily than I thought, soaking my sword and armor in his blood. Only, the cracks on my slightly damaged armor noticeably disappeared. At the same time, I felt refreshed. Good. I snapped the right arm off the body before throwing the rest of it down. As I chewed on the arm, I got myself reflecting. I just beat 5 goblin warriors in a battle I thought I could never win. There is nothing to be afraid of. 1 hour 19 minutes and 35 seconds. Let's go. Chapter 17. Mass Appearance 3. Mass Appearance 3. There are 4 main things I must remember. First, I must continue eating the goblin warrior's body during battle. For stamina replenishment for battle and mana replenishment. Second, keep in mind that predation cannot completely cure an injury. Predation can dramatically rejuvenate the wound, but it does not cure the injury itself. Therefore, fatal injuries should be avoided. Third, black lightning is not a technique to completely neutralize an enemy. Paralysis and curse depend only on probability. Therefore, I should not be confident in using just magic. Fourth, I should be careful about goblin warriors who are able to use skills. It could be deadly to have several of them in a single room against me. As I chewed on the leg of a goblin warrior, I made a mental note of each of the 4 cautions. If I can't avoid the battle anyway, I have to control the terms on the battlefield. Ki-yi! Ha! A group of goblin warriors ran through the aisle. I kicked the head of the closest one, landed skillfully on the floor, and chopped the neck of the warrior behind him. You received 960 experience. You acquired 80 bronze. I hurriedly blocked with my left arm a spear trying to stab my neck, then released black lightning, throwing it at my back and hitting a goblin warrior who tried to stab me. The black lightning hit him along with 2 other warriors, and they rolled to the ground. There are now 7 goblin warriors on the aisle, but only 3 to 4 at a time could face me, given their huge sizes and the narrowness of the cave. I tore off the head of the goblin warrior who I just killed, carried it with my mouth, and flew away from the rushing warriors. Kerlurler! Now I have to spare my energy. There were swords and spears from all sides. I swing my colossal sword and cut off a warrior's arm. The blood spurting from his arm covered my sword, my armor, and me. Even as they scream in pain, they did not stop assaulting me. I keep aiming for their arms. No matter how strong a warrior is, they would not be able to fight me without their arms. Let's see. Fortunately, I am a little stronger than most of them. The blood and flesh of the goblin warriors I've consumed so far have given me a slight edge. Ha! I avoided the goblin warriors' assault on me and stopped them with the sword I had. At the moment, as I watched a goblin warrior's head floating in the air, the expression he made just before he died came into my view clearly. Gyap gyap gyap. I felt a savage impulse, a hunger for flesh. Did my actions change the dungeon? Did the dungeon deliberately send out more monsters to get rid of me? I do not know. It makes no difference. I wielded the sword. You received 1011 experience. You acquired 1 silver. I should keep my neck and my head safe from their attacks because it could lead to a fatal injury. Even the weakest and the ugliest sword could kill me if it hits a sensitive area. Avoid the axe and kick the handle. As the axe flew through the air and tucked into the chest of another goblin warrior, I could feel the anger of the warriors grow intensely. Avoid the arrows that keep falling. Multiple arrows. The ebon heart rang a warning. Arrows are dangerous. It flies quickly to the neck and head, and if allowed, it can drive me to death. Continuously wielding my sword to block the arrows somehow, I grabbed one of the warriors by the cuff of his leather armor and broke his neck. You received 900 experience. You acquired 80 bronze. You acquired the beginner's physique skill. The reason why goblin warriors are generally weaker in close combat is that they are more adept with using long-range weapons. I gathered the direction from where the arrows flew. I grabbed a warrior's body and rushed to the one yielding the bow. A few more arrows and spears flew, but I was able to dodge them. I focused on destroying the goblin warrior with the bow. I got you now. I gave the body I was wearing as a shield a strong push to knock over the warriors trying to stop me and leaped high into the air. The goblin warrior, who was holding a loose bow, took aim and shot me. It flew by my knees and bounced off the armor. While he hurried to lodge another arrow, I was falling down towards him. I swung at the bastard with all my weight and momentum. My colossal sword struck his face, splitting his head open. I bit his head off and discarded the rest of his body. You received 1,200 experience. You acquired 1 silver, 10 bronze. Goblin warriors keep coming in from across the aisle. Fortunately, there was no one else who had a bow. Kirararik. Agoo. One of them, a warrior with a spear, stormed through the armor's defenses. His spear penetrated my abdomen. To prevent him from lifting me up, I hurriedly stepped back to take the spear out of my abdomen. I stretched my hand to shoot black lightning and hit him effectively. You received 1,290 experience. You acquired 1 silver, 15 bronze. The pain that just pierced the spine hit me. My own blood, not anyone else's, spurted out of my stomach wound. There was so much blood spilling out that it may cause my death. Turn it up. The irony is that my armor, showered by my blood, recovered as soon as it was broken. But it's still too painful. I want to fall on the floor and roll in pain. But if I fall, I die. When I die, everything is over. So I cannot fall. I think the warriors recognized their chance, seeing me in pain. Their eyes glowed with malice as they flocked to me with their axes, spears, and swords. Oh, ah, ah, ah. I screamed and shook my sword with them. Their movements seemed to be surprisingly faster. It was too difficult to use the sword yet, so I had to depend on black lightning. Take this. Cook. Chwack. Chance was on my side this time, and the skill hit them fatally. You received 960 experience. You acquired 85 bronze. You received 900 experience. You acquired 80 bronze. The two warriors who flew in front died. I was amazed and immediately stuck my colossal sword in the stomach of another warrior, letting it suck the blood. But my attack is still not enough. The warrior's sword was heading towards my neck. I quickly drew the sword stuck in his stomach, killing him. You received 1092 experience. You acquired 1 silver. Level up. Lower swordsmanship has become LV4. Beginner armor defense has become LV2. It was the moment I was waiting for. Level up to 31. My exhaustion, all the injuries sustained so far, including the severely wounded stomach, instantly disappeared. It's if they weren't there from the beginning, as if it's a new birth. And the goblin warrior, who saw it at close range, was amazed and stepped back. In just a few moments, however, I saw his eyes beginning to shine. He was going to use a skill. I shot a black lightning bolt straight at him. Stop! It's not clear whether you're paralyzed or cursed. But as soon as he was hit by the bolt, the light disappeared from his eyes. I took the opportunity. I hit him and put a sword in my face. Oh, ah, 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 ah. Only, suddenly, I was yelling like the goblin warriors. It was a very effective means of communicating my strength and will to the enemy. I can see from their expressions that they are starting to fear me. Key. There were corpses all around me, and more goblin warriors coming in. All of this is my prey. These were all medicines that would build my strength. I tore at a warrior's corpse with one hand, threw his arm into my mouth while wielding my sword held in the other hand. The ebon heart beats wildly. I am turning into a monster. Chapter 18. Mass Appearance. 4. Midnight. The buff ends. When that reminder popped up, there were 3 warriors in front of me. The 2 are wielding swords, the one on the right held a spear. Kerut! They slashed at the warrior's body that I dragged to protect myself, and I grabbed the one holding the spear. I twisted his neck and finished him off. Then, after biting off its arm, I threw the rest of the body against the others. You received 640 experience. You acquired 1 silver. Beginner physique has become LV4. The body did not hit them, and they simply cut it off and continued to approach me. But the purpose of throwing the body is to obscure their vision and slow them down. When their swords were aiming at my abdomen and shoulders, my sword was already stuck in them. Key! I charged my sword with black lightning and watched them collapse helplessly. That was it. You acquired 710 experience. You gained 1 silver, 5 bronze. You acquired 660 experience. You gained 90 bronze. Beginner black lightning has become LV5. I pulled out a goblin warrior's leg and looked around as I chewed it. Indeed, there was no living goblin warrior, at least near me. There were only bodies around me. The floor was filled with blood, bones, and flesh. It looked like a scene from hell. What a terrible sight. There was a stinging pain in my back. I didn't pay it too much attention. My armor will absorb the blood. Whew! Now, my mind is starting to calm down. My whole body was throwing. I leveled up. My body was full of wounds. There was no fatal wound, thankfully, but there were countless cuts, even on my face. All my injuries began to ache. I thought I wouldn't get killed in battle. Of course, without blood colossal sword and blood iron armor, I would have already been dead multiple times. However, my own combat ability has also increased. Not just status or skill-wise, but my basic movements in battle and in killing enemies improved. Since the moment when the Ebon Heart was activated, I felt myself feeling that the sensation needed to win a battle was increasing. Suddenly, I felt a tingling sensation at the back of my head. It's not because of the wound. It's because of the stare. Yes, there is a guy watching me from a distance. I have a low-level detection of level 2, so I have already grasped the guy's position, but I was deliberately pretending not to notice. I couldn't kill him unless he steps within my range. Then I will eat well. I have to show him that I was vulnerable. I was ready at any point to attack him as I began eating. It was indeed a dangerous meal. No matter how much you eat, your ability does not increase unless you eat a goblin warrior completely, from head to toe. During the battle, I ate countless warrior meat, but my ability has not increased since no one has been eaten from head to toe. So I was going to consume the bodies of all the goblin warriors scattered. Probably the level I'll receive from them will be close to 10 levels. The strength has risen by 1. The response came quickly. I continued to eat. Little by little, the guy was coming closer to me. The enemy is likely to have a ranged weapon or magic. I am firmly prepared. Sensing can capture the moment the enemy strikes. Immediately, you need to protect yourself and counterattack. 20 meters. 18 meters. Not yet. 16 meters. He will be within my range soon. My black lightning can only reach 5 meters, but I can throw a weapon from a longer distance. 15 of 200 predation after hunting goblin warriors. I ate 2. The moment I picked up the third warrior, an eerie feeling came. I quickly lifted my right arm, covering my neck and head, and at the same time I felt my arm burning. I threw the blood sword in the direction that sensing was pointing. Kit! With the sound of a tongue that wasn't like a goblin, he started to escape. But where did he think he's going? There are still more than 10 swords in my inventory. Stop! I protected myself with my right arm, relying only on the senses to locate the enemy and throw the swords in succession. Then, his attack stopped for a few seconds. I pulled an axe out of the inventory and threw it. Cring! With a loud sound, the axe connected. I took it as a signal to get up and start running, even if there were arrows flying towards me. Most of the arrows simply bounced off the armor, but the first one he shot pierced through the armor and hit my flesh. Obviously, the first one was a skill. It was painful, but the pain was already familiar. The thing that worried me more was the identity of the short arrow. A bolt. It was a crossbow arrow. Kit! Kit! I checked the shape of the goblin in front of me. High-quality leather armor that still has some swords I thrown in but still does not lose its luster. An iron shield held in both hands. It appeared lighter than a goblin warrior, but the energy from its body surpasses the warrior. Goblin Knight. I muttered like a whisper and hit him. He also pulled a long sword in place of the crossbow and stabbed me straight. The sword was shining unexpectedly. Shoo! I jumped back, avoiding it in an instinctive sense of crisis. Surprisingly, his attack pierced the exact spot where I was just a while ago. Upon missing, it clicked its tongue as if in anger. I stretched out a black lightning bolt and attacked him. Ki-yi-I. He was not shrunken, paralyzed, or cursed after being hit by a black thunderbolt. Rather, he rushed at me with a loud yell. The sharp shield tip is aimed at my face. Moreover, the shield was shining. He has 3 attack skills. I quickly jumped to the left. The momentum was so strong that I crashed against the wall, but I was able to avoid the attack. I immediately ran forward. The Goblin Knight was surprised by my unexpected behavior and carried out a retreat. I picked up one of the bolts scattered along with the crossbow from the floor and considered it. In addition, I was converting all the magic left to me into black lightning and charged it into a bolt. Key? I fired the bolt wrapped in black lightning. It broke through the air and stuck his neck, much faster than any of his previous attacks. I never thought I'd pick up a crossbow and attack. The Goblin Knight fell on the floor as it was running away. It didn't move afterward. I laughed because I knew what it was up to. Another bolt left on the floor was loaded into the crossbow and shot. I shot it through the neck of the knight, pretending to be dead. You received 1,600 experience. You acquired 70 silver bronze. You acquired the key to the boss room in the 7th floor of the Black Palace. My movement stopped. 1F boss, key. What it meant was clear. The heart of this place I've never been to. This key will drive me there. Goblin King and Goblin Knights, I have to battle with them. It was going to be a fight to survive. But I was enjoying the battle from a certain moment when my head almost insane. I was astonished by the change. But it is dangerous. Of course, it's not a good idea to not give your all during a battle. But if you get too involved in the battle, you'll risk your life. It was necessary to find the right balance. While fighting the warriors, I went around the rest of the dungeon quite a bit, except for the central area, but there are definitely spaces and monsters under this layer. If so, should I dig the floor with a shovel? Until you reach the underground stairs? No way. Perhaps this key is the answer. The Goblin King and possibly a number of Goblin Knights he might have. After defeating them and moving on, there will probably be something that will allow you to go down. I realized it by fighting the warriors. I have the talent of fighting against a group, probably thanks to the Ebon Heart and Predation. A Goblin Knight is a more demanding opponent than a warrior, but it is likely that I could defeat them. As with the warriors, I'll keep eating their parts while fighting the others to stay strong. Only one variable, the Goblin King. Can I beat the Goblin King not knowing what abilities he has and perhaps leads a large number of Goblin Knights? Is it possible? I found myself saying out loud and laughed at myself a little. Yes, it is possible if I make the most of my abilities. I'm not like how I was when I faced my first Goblin fighter. I got used to my skills to some extent, and I also had more combat experience. Moreover, I'm not a Goblin warrior, but a Hobgoblin. I have already deviated from the normal Goblin lineage. More than anything, I have predation. I looked around the room full of Goblin warrior bodies. Now, there was nothing to disturb my meal. As long as I have this key, the knights and the king could wait. I thought about the process I've been through. I killed a lot of warriors, and I was able to overcome all the warriors in the dungeon, so a monster with the means to reach the boss appears. I defeated it, giving me access to the boss. You don't have to worry about things that haven't happened. I pushed my thoughts out of my head and sat down again. I was interrupted and couldn't eat properly, but now it's different. Hundreds of corpses with good bodies. I can expect changes in status by eating only 5 of them. I am expecting at least a 10-level upgrade. I will enjoy this food.
Chapter 19, Humans, un. Humans, un.
Goblin Warrior Predation after hunting 17/200. Strength increased by 1. Prey after Goblin Warrior hunting 23 of 200. Health increased by 1. I became a Hobgoblin, and my stomach was quite large, but my stomach was full of 2 warriors. Of course, for me to lower my stamina and take my stomach off, I could use leap. Goblin Warrior Predation after hunting 49/200. Beginner leap has become LV7. Magic has increased by 1. The fountain of magical energy is flickering. There is no magic to waste. Goblin Warrior Predation after hunting 56/200. Health increased by 1. Prey January 5th after hunting Goblin Knights. The strength increased by 2. You have acquired the beginner power attack. The hand that was reaching out toward another prey stopped. I clearly saw the notification that I had just learned a new skill. Power attack. I urgently browsed the skill information. Beginner power attack LV1. Instantly exerts powerful power by putting mana in your own weapon. Health is also consumed. Increases the chance of critical strikes and injuries, but after using it, you will not be able to move for a while due to the rebound that exerts great power. I opened my eyes. There was no doubt. It was the same skill used by the Goblin Knight and the other Goblin Warriors and Goblin Knights. Finally, I have acquired a skill related to melee attacks. Of course, I know the disadvantages well, so it will take a lot of practice. But I got stronger. A skill that consumes mana in addition to physical strength. Predation is necessary to practice this. However, since it is also inevitable to use leap and black lightning, I decided to use these 3 skills evenly from now on as I recover stamina and mana through predation. I tried power attack a few times immediately, and after roughly grasping my sense of skill, I started predation again. The speed of eating naturally became faster because the strength and mana fountain could be brought out more quickly. Goblin Warrior Predation after hunting 78 of 200. Beginner Black Lightning has become LV6. Strength increased by 1. Goblin Warrior Predation after hunting 134/200. Health increased by 1. Beginner Power Attack has become LV2. Goblin Warriors yielded a taste similar to boiled chicken breast, even if it is full of blood. The taste that should be the worst is still delicious, thanks to the predation skill. 200 out of 200 predation after Goblin Warrior hunting. Beginner Leap has become LV8. Strength increased by 1. Magic increased by 1. Beginning Black Lightning has become LV7. Beginner Leadership became LV10 and changed to lower leadership. The number of objects that can be under control increases. A little chance is given to control a higher level object than yourself. Again, leadership has grown to a lower level. It's my third highest skill, other than swordsmanship and detection. However, it is a skill I've never used before. What the hell? As I sighed and tried to reach out for a new body, I realized something as I saw my hand stopped in the air. There were no more bodies around. I ate the entire number of warrior bodies. There must have been over 309. Of course, the quest has been achieved. If I hunt and eat 476 goblin fighters, for goblin knights and 1 goblin king, I will have new possibilities.
Kang Si-ha, Fate. Hob Goblin LV32.
Strength, 136 stamina, 135 magic, 49 luck dash. Skill, Ebonheart Predation LV2, Lower Swordsmanship LV5, Beginner Spear LV4, Beginner Smash LV3, Beginner Archery LV1, Beginner Armor Defense LV6, Beginner Spell LV4, Beginner Throw LV8, Beginner Power Attack LV3, Beginner Black Lightning LV7, Beginner Leap LV8. The status change was less than my expectations. It adds 20 status to Strength and Stamina, and 10 status to Magic. It's a 7-level bonus, but I was looking forward to getting 10 levels or higher. The more you eat, the more corpses you need to raise 1 stat. In the end, I had to eat 20 bodies just to raise a stat. Still, the skill growth was delightful. As I consumed a lot of warriors dealing with swords, the lower-level swordsmanship reached level 5, and there were also spears, smashes, and even archery that I didn't have. All abilities are beneficial once you have them. There was nothing bad. Leap, Black Lightning, and Power Attack have been used continuously to empty my stamina and magic, resulting in beginner level 8, level 7, and level 3, respectively. Throwing and sensing were also skills most of the warriors had, so it grew a lot, and armor defense was the same. Warrior bodies were all eaten. Growth has been confirmed. I naturally moved on to the next thing to do. This is to hunt the remaining 476 goblin fighters. Key cake. Key. I never imagined the day would come when I would say this in this dungeon. It's so easy. I gained 50 experience. I got 10 bronze. A light sword attack separated the goblin fighter's neck and body. A simple kick can break a fighter's neck. Fighting the goblin fighter now, there was no need for sensation, detection, or skill. There was a wall that could never be crossed between them and me. I was struck by a goblin fighter's sword, but it didn't hurt at all. It is not because the armor is defensive. My stamina at 135 could not be affected by a rusty sword wielded by a goblin fighter. No matter how many there were, they couldn't beat me anymore. Just by kicking and hitting, goblin fighters fell into their deaths. Adult and child? No. It was more like a fight between a martial arts champion and a newborn baby. Even with hundreds of babies, you can't put a martial arts champion at risk. It was the same. I gained 45 experience. I got 9 bronze. I moved across the aisle, randomly cutting down every goblin fighter I encountered. It would take a long time to kill and predicate all 476, but I had something to look forward to. Then, I experienced my second mass appearance. There seems to be a certain law in mass appearances, which is hunting dozens or more of the same monster in quick succession. This is only my guess, however, so I wanted to verify it on a less dangerous opponent, goblin fighters. Key cake. Kick. Key profit. The goblin fighter is frightened and starts running away as soon as he sees me, but I don't want to miss a single one. If I see one, I either run and cut it down or throw a weapon to kill it. Then, I eat right on the spot, using black lightning, leap and power attacks if I feel full of mana and stamina. There is no waste. And then, the omen appeared. Goblin fighters started to go together in two. Key cake. Kikiik. As soon as I discovered it, I acted with a sharper sense of the whole body, so I can respond promptly even when mass appearance occurs. Even if I don't do it, I probably won't be in danger, but I'm training my mindset so that even when I face goblin warriors in large numbers, I can overcome it. So this is it. Suddenly, I heard voices. It was a young man and a woman. Oh, brother, I'm so scared. Do we really have to come in like this? Even if I'm scared, I can't help it. Songbuk-gu was the only place where the suspension was taken. This is the only place we can come in. Speak in a smaller voice. If you think the monster is too dangerous, you have to jump right away. Appa, why do we have to raise our level? Didn't you hear the government announcement? Combatants are treated differently depending on their level. How lucky they are to be both combatants. And please lower your voice. The first thought I had was to interrupt them. You must be quieter if you don't want goblins to notice you. The next thought was that both siblings were too weak. I thought all the combatants would be strong, but it appears that it was just an illusion. Only, each of them, at best, will only be able to catch one goblin. Mom, do not cry. But I'm scared, brother. We should live well. You two, we can't die in vain. Ha! I want to live. I want to live well. Listening to the siblings' conversation, I remembered my sister, who was partnering with the bandit's daughter. I am a monster, and I am an enemy to them. It is easier to die soon than face her in battle. Chapter 20. Humans. 2. Humans. 2. The mass appearance began. A large number of goblin fighters rushed at me. I smashed them all at once and cut them down on the spot. It was annoying to find their scattered bodies later, so I made sure they fell in a pile. More and more goblin fighters came at me. They were good opponents to practice power attacks without risk, and I didn't hesitate to use it as long as I had mana. Key. Ha! You gained 50 experience. You acquired 10 bronze. It's time to admit it. I enjoyed swinging the sword. It was fun to break the enemy's neck and take his life. It was good to wield an axe and smash them or pierce them with a spear. The moment I overcame the enemy was enjoyable. It was a little bit stronger, and it was so much fun to get experience. Goblin fighter predation after hunting 667/1-000. Kayak. Oh, ah. Goblin fighter predation after hunting 724/1-000. Beginner power attack has become LV4. The goblin fighters are now too weak for me, so sadly, they can't increase my abilities too much. It wasn't meaningless, though, as I still leveled up my power attack. While I was repeating indiscriminate slaughter and predation like that, I could hear the siblings were very slowly advancing through the dungeon. Hoo-hoo. I'm glad I'm a combatant. Did you gain experience? Yes, brother. Let's move slowly after a little rest. If we see a stronger goblin, we must run away. Ha! The siblings were more cautious than the three. Of course, my voice was still loud, but it wasn't enough to call all the goblin fighters together. I am making a big fuss in the cave now. Maybe I am helping my brother and sister survive. Of course, I didn't know how my presence would affect them. I have no intention of seeking the siblings and killing them. They are far too weak for me. If they had been strong, I would have been hunted and killed as a monster the moment I encountered them, regardless of their cautious character. So no. Still, I think it will be a little bit heartbreaking when they die. My pretense and hypocrisy are painful. Am I sympathetic to them because they are weak? Do I really feel different about the death of another human being? Or is it just because they remind me of my little sister? That's arrogant. It is a thought to be abandoned. Any human, if they aim to harm me, I'll kill them. I'll kill them to survive. Goblin fighter predation after hunting 872/1-000. I deliberately dismissed my thoughts, scattered my interest in siblings, and dealt only with my enemies. I killed them and ate them as soon as possible. I didn't want to think about more useless thoughts. Ki. Goblin fighter predation after hunting 968/1,000. However, something changed when the number of goblin fighters fell below 50. Ki. The goblin fighters seemed to regain a little reason in their tiny brains. Instead of rushing in, they started to turn and run away from me. Why? Is it because the level difference between me and them is severe? Or maybe I slaughtered a lot of them too soon. Anyway, they started running away from me and the speed was strangely fast. The siblings were in the direction of their escape. Can I really go in? A little bit. If I catch a little more, I think the level will rise. Silly brother and sister. I went after the goblin fighters straight away. The goblin fighters won't respawn for the next few hours. I have to catch them or be bothered in waiting for hours to complete the target. Is that really the reason? I asked myself. Ki. The goblin fighters may not be faster than me, but it was quite cumbersome to chase the scattered guys. Eventually, I missed a few of them, and they ended up crossing the aisle. It was where the stupid siblings were. Chi. I clicked my tongue unconsciously. Of course, if I eat what I've cut down so far, it might be enough to reach 1,000. Now, the situation is different from that of the 3 humans before. At that time, they entered the dungeon at will and died at will. But now, the siblings are different. If I hadn't made a mass appearance occur, if I hadn't missed some goblin fighters, they wouldn't have been killed. So if they die, I'm responsible for it. There were 3 reasons why I neglected the 3 people in the past. First, because I didn't have the power to save them at the time. Second, because they were very likely to hostile to me and may attack me. Third, for me, they are the only random strangers who chose to go to the dungeon and I have no reason to help them. And now the situation is completely different. For me, the goblin fighter is nothing. The siblings who have no power to deal with the goblin fighter can't attack me. They are now at risk because of me. Is this the moment that I have to choose between human and monster? No, that's not it. The ebon heart thumped. This is simply a problem of my pride. It was a shame for me that someone else will die because of my mistake. The anxiety was short and the action was quick. I jumped over the aisle. There was already quite a distance between the guys and me, and the siblings facing the goblin fighters were running away. Back! Don't look back and run. I told you not to go in. Their voices were so young. The brother seemed to be a high school student, and the sister is a middle school student. Oh, what are you doing? Run. Don't look back. The sister was running from behind his brother, who was covering for his sister. There was already a rusty sword on his back. It's the goblin fighter. Their throwing is not the best, but you can get hit by it, especially if you do not have much battle experience. The brother is hiding his suffering because his sister may stop running if she noticed he's hurt. It was absurd. Even if he suffered such a fatal injury, he wasn't even crying. When I stepped into the aisle and encountered the scene, I threw the sword in my hand and knocked down a goblin fighter following them. I can kill these guys with one blow. If I were closer, I could have wiped them out by a black lightning bolt, but its range does not exceed 10 meters even if it's already at the 7th level. I hurriedly pulled out more swords from the inventory and threw them in a hurry, but it was hard for me to throw them, considering that the siblings were also running in that direction. I have to be careful not to hit them. Then, a problem occurred. The brother, who misunderstood that the goblin fighter running past him is aiming for his sister, desperately caught the guy. The goblin fighter screamed and stuck a sword in him. Soon after, I threw a sword at the fighter, and the two fell side by side. Recognizing that her brother had disappeared from behind her, the younger sister looked back and noticed the bloody scene. A sword was stuck in his brother's head, another in his back. The sister then noticed my presence and couldn't cry properly. She started dragging her feet backward. She looked like she had a very cute face, but it was hard to see because of her fear and her tears. "Hey, stop," she told me. The clothes the boy was wearing were the same school uniform as my brother's. They were from the same school. Since the words of the 3 people were Korean, I knew that I was in Korea, but it was just now that I realized I was in the region where I lived. But what shocked me more than that is that the world is going crazy enough to push even students in school uniforms into dungeons. At that moment, the family I had forgotten about came to mind. No one in the family has a competent partner. My sister has the best one, the bandit's daughter. How is my family living now? Don't go any closer. Stop, please. I immediately defeated the thoughts that are out of my control. What am I doing worrying about my family now? It's hard for me to even survive. I can find my family after securing my safety. It may be late, but I cannot help it. My family is precious, but my life is also important. I didn't want to die. I couldn't run out like this. The younger sister couldn't run away and just stared at me with a terrified face. Did she realize it's useless to run away? Or is she frozen in fear? I walked slowly. I recovered my sword from the goblin fighters. As I neared the young girl, she closed her eyes sharply. Her tears flowed uncontrollably. After I recovered the swords, I turned around and tried to go, but the young boy's face, dead with a rusty sword sticking out of his forehead, burned into my eyes. It was a face filled with pain and despair. Is it because of his own death? Or is it because he could not protect his sister anymore? I carefully pulled the sword out from his forehead. The dead blood flowed out a little, then stopped. I closed his eyes. Then I got up and walked again. Only, my sister was trying to say something, but I didn't look back. Well, why? It would have been better for her if she stayed silent and hoped that I, a monster, did not notice her anymore. But she was really stupid. If I opened my mouth and answer, I would have to kill her, so I walked without stopping. Why did you save me? Her voice was weak and like a whisper, but I heard her words. Of course, I ignored it. We've reached the end of today's episode. Thank you for traversing the boundless landscapes of fantasy with us. If today's story has sparked joy within you, please remember to hit the like button, share our journey with others, and subscribe to Lord of the Stories for an ever-expanding collection of mystical escapades. Until we meet again to turn the page to a new adventure, hold the tales dear in your heart and let the embers of magic warmly glow in your spirit. Farewell, intrepid explorers of the narrative unknown.